Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Fola. In today's video, I'll be sharing with you how to make this beautiful tiered dress, or you can call it a Gypsy dress. This dress comes in different layers and you can determine how many layers you want yours to be. For this tutorial, we'll be making the exact one in the picture, and this one is a 3-layered dress. We will be making 2 different types of tiered dress for this tutorial. For the first one, which is the one you are seeing on the screen right now, the layer started around the under bust, as you can see. And for the second style, which is this one, you can see the layer started somewhere around the chest line. And it has a ruffle sleeve. So let's get right into this video. I'll be making use of these 3 different colors of crepe. The pink color will be for the upper bodice and for the first layer, while the navy blue will be for the second layer, and the powder blue will be for the third layer. I'll be drafting my upper bodice on paper first so you can see clearly what I'm doing. I'll be making this one first, the one that is stopping around the under bust. The first thing I did was to make a straight line at the top of my paper, so that line there will be my starting line. From the starting line, I placed the chest line measurements. The chest line I'm working with is 10 inches and the under bust measurements I'm working with is 18 inches. And I added ½ inch allowance. That will serve as the allowance to join to the layers. Then I extended my lines. So I have the shoulder line here, the chest line, and the under bust line. Then I placed half of the shoulder measurements on the shoulder line and on the chest line. And I connected that with a straight ruler. Then I placed the neck width. I'm working with a neck width of 4.5. You can make use of 4 inches or 3.5 inches for your neck width if you are a small size. This dress is for a big size. And the front neck depth is 8 inches, while the back neck depth is 1.5. Then I'm going to connect that. Then I connected my back neckline. And for the front neckline, I connected it with a slight curve. I don't want it to be a sharp V. Then I came down 1 inch from my shoulder line and I connected that to the neck width to form the shoulder slant. And I got the midpoint of what I have there and I came in by 0.5 inch. Then I connected my armhole. Then I went ahead to place my horizontal measurements. On the chest line, I placed 1/4 of the bust circumference and I added 1 inch for the side seam allowance. And on the under bust, I placed 1/4 of the under bust measurements and I added 1 inch side seam allowance. Then I connected the points together. And that's all for the upper bodice. Then I went ahead to cut this out. I cut out the front neckline first. I placed my fabric on fold. This dress will be having a zipper at the back, so I placed both the front and back on each other, and I left 1 inch allowance for my zipper for the back pattern. I'm going to pin my pattern paper on my fabric, and I left ½ inch allowance at the top of my fabric before pinning down my pattern paper on it. So I'm going to be cutting out the back neckline first. And I left ½ inch allowance around the neckline, the shoulder line, and the armhole of the dress. I left ½ inch allowance on the armhole also to join to the sleeves. Then I split my back pattern into 2. Then I separate my front from my back pattern. Then I went ahead to cut off my front neckline from the pattern paper and I placed it back on my fabric. Then I cut out my front neckline as well. So I left ½ inch allowance at the neckline also. Then the next thing I did was to cut a facing for my neckline. You can choose to make use of a bias tape for your neckline. All I did was to fold my fabric into 2 and I placed my bodice on it. And I traced out the neckline and a little bit of the shoulder line. The length of the facing is about 3 inches, and that is all for my front facing. I did the same thing for the back also. I traced out the neckline and the shoulder line, and I made the length of the facing about 3 inches or so, and I just cut that out. And I split into two to have two separate pieces for the back. So all I'm going to do is to place right side of my facing on the right side of the neckline, just like that, and I'll stitch with 1/2 inch allowance. I'll do the same thing for the front also. I'll place right side of my facing right side of the fabric, and I'll stitch with 1/2 inch allowance. So this is it after I was done stitching my facing to the neckline, and I made notches around the neckline. So I'm going to turn it to the right side, and I'll give it a good press. And I'm going to make use of my hemming gum to gum my facing to the fabric, just like that. And I'm going to do the same thing to the back neckline also. This is it after I was done pressing. You can see how neat the neckline is laying. So the next thing I'll do now is to join my shoulders. I placed my back pattern on the front, and I'm going to join them by the shoulders with 1/2 inch allowance. Then I'm going to join the sides also with my 1 inch side seam allowance. So this is it. I'm gonna have to join the shoulders and the sides. So the next thing I want to do now is to determine the length I want my layers to be. So the full length of the dress I'm making is 40 inches. And I already made the upper part of the dress to be 18 inches. That is the shoulder to the underbust. I'm going to subtract the upper bodice from the full length of the dress. So I'm going to subtract 18 from 40 inches. So that is 22. So all I did was to divide 22 into 3, since I'm having 3 layers for my tiered dress. So I divided 22 into 3, and I have about 7.333. So I just approximate that to be 7.5 inches. So the length of each of my tiers will be 7.5 inches. So I'm going to add 1 inch to that to make 8.5 inches. The 1 inch I added is for joining, 1/2 inch to join to the upper part, and 1/2 inch to join to the down part. But for the last tier, I'll be cutting out 9 inches for the length. That means I added 1.5 inches to 7.5 inches. 1/2 inch to join to the upper bodies, and 1 inch to hem the down part. That is the reason why we added 9 inches for the last tier. So to determine the width of each layers, for the first layer, I'm going to measure round what I have on the under bust. I'm going to measure that round. I think I have about 44 or 45 inches there. So all I did was to multiply that by 1.5 inches. I have about 67.5, so I just approximate that to be 70 inches. So the width of my first tier will be 70 inches, and the length will be 8.5 inches. This is including of the allowance for joining. And for the second tier, all I'll do is to multiply the width of the first tier, which is 70 inches, by 1.5. And I have 105 inches. So the second tier, what I will be cutting for the width of my second tier is 105 inches, and the length will be 8.5. And the same thing applies for the third tier, which is the last tier. All I will do is to multiply the width of the second tier, which is 105, by 1.5. That is 157 inches. And the length of the last tier is 9 inches. That means 1 inch to hem the down part and 1/2 inch to join to the second tier. I hope you understand. So I'm gonna have to cut my layers off camera. So all I'll do is to gather the first tier to the main bodies, then I will gather the second tier to the first tier, and I will gather the last tier to the second tier, and I'll hem the down parts of the last tier also. I'm gonna have to run my gathers. I've gathered the 3 tiers together, and I've hemmed the down part also. All I'll do now is to join the down parts to my upper bodies. So I'm gonna have to join the down part to the upper part of my dress. Then the next thing I'll do now is to close the zipper allowance line, and I'm going to leave a space for my zipper. I'll go ahead and close my zipper allowance with 1 inch, and I'll leave spacing for my zipper. Then for the sleeve, I went ahead to cut my sleeve off camera. I'll be adding a gathers to the sleeve also. So the length of the sleeve I have here is 13 inches. I added half-inch allowance to that to join the gathers to the sleeve. And the width of my sleeve is about 16 inches. So to cut my gathers, all I'll do is to multiply what I have on the width of my sleeve by 1.5 inches, just like we did for the dress. So I want the length of the gathers that I'll be joining to the sleeve to be 7 inches. And I added 1.5 inches to the 7 inches, making 8.5 inches. Half inch to join to the sleeve and 1 inch to hem the down part of the sleeve. So this is it. All I'm going to do is to gather the flare to the sleeve and I'm going to hem the down parts. So this is it. I've gone ahead to fix my zipper to my dress, as you can see. And I've gone ahead to close the side of my sleeve also with my 1 inch allowance. And the last thing I'm going to do to this dress is to join my sleeve to the armhole of the dress, and that will be all. So for the second style, the one you are seeing right now on your screen, the layers will be starting from the chest line. So I'll be drafting out the upper bodies on the pattern paper. All I did was to remove my starting line. So from that point, I placed my chest line measurement, which is 9.5, and I added half inch to that. So the layers will be starting half inch below my chest line. Then I connected my dots. So the next thing I did was to place half of my shoulder measurements on the shoulder line and on the chest line. Then I connected that with a straight ruler. Then I placed my neck width, which is 4 inches, and the back neck depth is 1 inch, while the front neck depth is 4 inches. Then I connected my dots with a curve. Then I came down 1 inch below my shoulder line and I connected that to the neck width to form my shoulder slants. Then I got the midpoints of what I have left there and I came in by half inch. Then I connected my curve. Then on the chest line, I placed quarter of my bust circumference. Then I added half inch for ease before adding my 1 inch side seam allowance. And I just connected that line to the second line. And that will be all. I'll be cutting that out now. I'll be cutting out the back neckline first. I won't be adding any zipper for this dress. There will be a button at the back. So all I did was to fold my fabric into 4. Then I cut out the same measurements I have there. And I added half inch allowance around the armhole, shoulder line and the neckline. And I added half inch to the down part also to join to the layers. Then I removed the back bodice. And I'm going to trace out the front neckline now. Then all I did was just to place it back. Then I cut out the front neckline, making sure I leave half inch allowance around the neckline. So I'm going to make a slit at the center of my back. So I just came down about 6 inches from my neckline. I just came down about 6 inches. So I'm just going to make a slit and I'll stop at the 6 inches mark like that. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to cut a facing for my neckline. So I just traced out my neckline and I cut out my facing. Then I did the same thing for the back neckline also. I traced out the neckline and I cut out the slit also. So I'll go ahead and sew my facing now. I've gone ahead to sew the front facing, as you can see. Then for the back facing, I went ahead to cut a strip for fabric to make my button hole. So all I did was to cut a fabric of about 1 inch and I folded it twice like this and I folded it again and I made a stitch on it. So all I did was to cut it to be about 3 inches. I'm going to be placing that on the right side of my fabric. So I came down 1/2 inch below my neckline, and I'm going to be placing that just like that. So I went ahead to fold it into 2, just like you see me doing, and I'm going to place it right there, 1/2 inch below my neckline. Then I used my pin to hold it down, just like that. Then I placed my facing, the right side of my facing the right side of the fabric. Then I'll go ahead and stitch it round my neckline with 1/2 inch, and I'll stitch my stitch also with 1/2 inch. So I'm just going to stitch it round just like that. So this is it after I was done sewing. All I'm doing now is to make notches round the neckline. Then I turn it to the right side. So as you can see, so that is the point where I'm going to fix my button. So I'll go ahead to give it a good press. I've gone ahead to sew the facing for my front pattern also, and I've joined the shoulders, as you can see. The next thing I'm going to do now is to determine the length of the down part. So I want the full length of the dress to be 40 inches, and I already cut out 10 inches for the upper part. So all I'm going to do is to deduct the 10 inches from 40 inches, and I'll be left with 30 inches. So I'm going to divide the 30 inches into 3 equal parts, since I'm going to be having 3 layers for my dress. So when I divided 30 into 3, I have 10 inches. So the length of each layers will be 10 inches. Then I'm going to add 1 inch allowance to that for joining to make 11 inches. So to determine the width that I'm going to be cutting out, all I'm going to do is to measure what I have on the chest line, and I'm going to multiply whatever I have there by 1.5. So I'm going to be cutting for the back separate and for the front separately, since there is no zipper allowance, so the joining would be on the side. So I'm going to be cutting for the front separately and for the back separately. I don't want to go over this again, so the video will not be too long. So just do this the same way we did for the first style. The only difference is that we are cutting for the front part separately and for the back part separately. So that is the only difference we are going to be having for this. So I've gone ahead to cut my layers, as you can see. So all I'm going to do now is to gather them up to the bodice. So I've gone ahead to join my gathers to the upper bodice, as you can see. The next thing we are going to be working on is the sleeve. So on my armhole, I'm going to come in by 2 inches from the side, just like this. I'll mark 2 inches, and I'll do that on the other side also. I'll mark 2 inches. Then I'm going to measure around what I have from one of the markings to the other point. I'm going to measure around what I have there. I have about 20 inches. So I went ahead to cut a long strip of fabric, which is times 2.5 of what I have on my armhole. The width is about 50 inches and the length is 5 inches. So I hemmed the down part of the strip, as you can see. Then all I'm going to do now is to fold it into 2 equal halves, just like that. And I'll just give it a curve at the edge like that. I'll just make a slight curve there at the edge. And I'm going to cut that out. So I'll go ahead and make a gather stitch on that. So I fixed one side of my sleeve, as you can see. So I'll just show you how to fix the other side also. So starting from the 2 inches mark that we made there, I'm going to pin down my ruffle to the armhole, and I'm going to stop at the second point that I made, and I'll go ahead and stitch that with my 1/2 inch seam allowance. So I've gone ahead to fix the ruffle to the sleeve, and I finished up the armhole with my bias tape. You can see how neat the armhole is looking. And the last thing I'm going to be doing for this dress is to join the sides of my dress with my 1 inch allowance. So I placed them right side facing each other, and I'll sew my sides with my 1-inch side seam allowance. We have come to the end of today's video. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope this video was helpful to you in one way or the other. Please do not forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.